What is the simplified form of the expression? State any excluded values. So in part A, for my excluded values, I know my denominator, 5 minus 2x, cannot equal 0. So I will subtract 5 from both sides. Negative 2x cannot equal negative 5. And then divide by negative 2, x cannot equal 5 over 2. So now, to simplify, I need to factor my numerator and denominator. So my numerator is 2x minus 5, and my denominator is negative 2x plus 5, and that is putting it in standard form, right? Remember, before we factor, it should be in standard form. So my numerator has only a GCF of 1, so I can show I'm factoring out 1. You don't have to. My denominator, since my leading coefficient now is negative, has a GCF of negative 1. And when I factor out negative 1, that leaves 2x minus 5. Now I see a common factor of 2x minus 5 that cancels. And I have 1 divided by negative 1, which is negative 1, as my simplified answer. So for part B, my excluded values, 4 minus y cannot equal 0. If I add y to both sides, 4 cannot equal y. So now I need to simplify. First, I'm going to make sure that everything is in standard form, and my denominator is not. So I'm going to rewrite it. So this is standard form. So now I'll factor. My numerator is a square minus a square, y minus 4, y plus 4. And my denominator, since my leading coefficient is negative, I can factor out a negative 1, and that leaves y minus 4. Now I see there's a common factor of y minus 4 that cancels. So I have y plus 4 divided by negative 1, or negative y minus 4 if I divide them both by negative 1. Those are both acceptable answers. So now for part C, no, not part C, part D, my excluded value. I know 2z squared minus 2 cannot equal 0. Now this is a quadratic, so I'm going to factor. First, I could take out a 2, and that leaves z squared minus 1 cannot equal 0. Now I'll factor that because it's a square minus a square. Z minus 1, z plus 1. So for my excluded values, z cannot equal 1 for my first factor, or negative 1. So now to simplify, I need to first make sure everything is in standard form. In this case, my numerator is not. So I'm going to rewrite that. So this is now, let me mark this off, standard form. And my denominator is 2z squared minus 2. So now factor that numerator. Since I have a negative leading coefficient, I'm going to factor out a negative 3 as my GCF, and that leaves z minus 1. And then our denominator, we already factored above, 2, z minus 1, z plus 1. Now this common factor of z minus 1 cancels, and I'm left with negative 3 over 2 times z plus 1. So this is my simplified rational expression. So remember, you might need to rewrite in standard form before you factor.